The wife and I sat and watched The Lord of the Rings in a weekend-long marathon, followed by the Hobbit trilogy. You know, as you do. I watched it in that specific order because of when they were released. I wanted to see the difference between one of the greatest trilogies of all time, The Lord of the Rings, and one of the biggest missed boats of all time, The Hobbit trilogy. It was the same director. It was essentially the same crew. So, what went wrong? I think I need to explore how entertainment is essentially moving backwards in time and devolving rather than progressing and evolving for potential viewers. This is Marks on Media. Let's get into it.
Marks on Media.
With the two trilogies I listed, you can point to multiple things that went wrong. Sure, you took a short book of under 100,000 words and stretched it out to cover three 3-hour films. Yes, you added in characters and side plots that weren't in the book and didn't belong in there. Yes, the actors from the Lord of the Rings trilogy that were reprising their roles were now a decade older and very much looked it, and some of that stuff could be swept aside and excused. But what made The Lord of the Rings, just at a glance, a much more visually appealing trilogy than The Hobbit? In the interest of saving money and time while also trying to evolve, the studio opted to use far more CGI than ever before and do away with the majority of practical sets and effects. Even characters like Azog, the White Orc, who hunted down Thorin for 3 films, was completely CGI. And yes, you can argue that Gollum was CGI'd over Andy Serkis in a mocap suit, but it seemed like Gollum actually belonged there and fit in, while Azog looked cartoonish, fake, and phony from the first frame until his last. This got me thinking about CGI and the over-reliance on it in films since the mid-2000s. When Avatar came out in 2009, I saw it in theaters with my sister. It was beautiful. The CGI was crisp, everything was awe-inspiring. The story itself was mid, but it wasn't terrible. We'd seen it all before in movies like Fern Gully and Pocahontas, but visually, it was stunning. When the sequel, The Way of Water, came out 13 years later, it took me 3 sittings to get through it. 3!
Why in the would I ever do that, ever?
I went back and examined why, and really thought about it. Was it overly long? Sure. Was the story any worse than the first movie? Perhaps slightly, but not a major drop in quality. It just didn't feel new. I wasn't blown away by the 3D, computer-animated cartoons glittering before me anymore. I had seen it all before. I had seen it done better. They weren't enough to keep me glued to my television long enough to sit through a 3-hour scree against colonialism and how we should all hug a tree. Even in movies like the re-releases of the original Star Wars trilogy, George Lucas decided that CGI needed to be utilized to jam in a bunch of more effects and background aliens. Did it make the films any better? Did it add literally anything to one of the greatest film trilogies of all time, rather than more screen clutter? Nope. And while I'm not as big of a hater of the prequel trilogy as most, that too happened upon the same pitfalls as the Hobbit trilogy, where George once had to use practical effects, ingenuity, and creative thinking to portray these breathtaking, memorable visuals. He could now just have some animator created on a computer and throw actors in front of a green screen. It actively made the films worse, story aside. When I recently recorded my video about the demise of 2D animation, especially when it comes to feature-length films, it really got me reminiscing about what I got to see and experience as a kid. Sure, I talked about the uniqueness of the drawings and how you could generally tell an artist's signature look just at a glance, but there's more to it. I remember when the promos played for Treasure Planet, they showed how they uniquely drew each panel and worked with the existing computer technology to make the film look as 3D as possible while still maintaining the 2D animation that they knew and loved. For Disney's Tarzan, they talked about studying the way skaters and surfers moved so that they could have Tarzan's feet surf over the tree branches in the forest. As implausible as that sounds, they animated it in a unique way by hand to make it something no one had ever seen before. It seems like the only medium still keeping 2D animation alive is in the East. Anime is a thriving, growing medium. In fact, after the success of feature-length theatrical releases like Demon Slayer Infinity Castle and Chainsaw Man The Rise Arc, companies like Sony are openly saying that they have zero interest in bidding on Warner Bros. Discovery and DC Studios. The over-reliance on CGI and the constant retelling of superhero stories has grown tiresome and is no longer a surefire moneymaker. Anime is the way of the future, and Sony has the vision for that. Anime, though made exclusively in Japan, has been growing in the West. Even manga, which are essentially Japanese comic books, are absolutely crushing the American comic book industry. They don't rely on heavy-handed, in-your-face political messaging that treats their audience like idiots. They weave in messages to a good story with beautiful animation, doing what Western animators used to know how to do expertly. CGI blew us away for years. The early 2000s superhero films, like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films, were fantastic and mostly realistic. The tentacles of Davy Jones's face in the Pirates of the Caribbean were incredible to see. Even the old Pixar films were wonders to behold for kids and adults who never thought computers would animate an entire movie without a single hand-drawn frame. But somewhere along the line, instead of improving, the quality seemed to drop. The hardworking, innovative animators of old who poured their hearts and souls into everything they created, they're mostly gone. They tried to impart this knowledge onto the next generation, who seem to take a bunch of shortcuts instead. You can say the same thing about architects and people in construction, but that's a whole nother video.
Keep moving forward.
In some cases, it's not always their fault. Companies like Disney drove their employees for more content. More content. More, faster, faster. It's never enough, and it needs to be bigger, better, flashier, and faster. We need more on the streaming service. We need more content for more people. Individualize everything.
How about new?
They flooded the market with CGI slop, and people like me have had enough. Unfortunately, I seem to be relatively alone in this argument. I am the old man shouting at clouds. I am in the minority of people who look at this stuff and go, no thanks. We see some relative trending in the positive, with Star Wars and Marvel essentially becoming dead brands, and Disney as a whole having to work extra hard to get anyone to watch literally anything they put out. Hell, even beloved Disney brands like Pixar dropped a huge bomb with Elio, which would have at least done modest numbers 10 years ago. We've seen outcries against other shows and films relying too heavily on flashy visuals, essentially jangling shiny keys in our faces, and not putting forth an effort when it comes to good storytelling. But it's not enough. Films like a Minecraft movie and the Avatar sequels are still big-time moneymakers. The next 10 damn Blue People Avatar movies will probably make a profit, and a big one. A Minecraft movie, which is essentially Jack Black farting in front of a green screen for 2 hours, is getting a sequel that will probably rake in more money than the GDP of most countries.
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
We, as the viewers, as the consumers, need to stand up as a collective and say, no. Now, parents, I know it's tempting to want to take your kids to a flashy light orgy for your eyes just to get them to shut up for 2 hours. I mean, this is the iPad generation and everything, but can we please have some freaking standards for once? It's pathetic that our only standard in this era is, well, at least all the actors are keeping their clothes on. We need to demand more and better from Hollywood.
Give me what I want.
Again, maybe I'm just screaming into the void, and this is not me saying that all movies that use green screen and CGI are bad. There are some really good, entertaining films that utilize these technologies. I want to see them evolve, and also incorporate older techniques of making art. To evolve does not always mean discard the past. The wisdom of the ages still holds up and has a lot to tell us. I guess this whole video is just one part me begging someone to step up and learn from the past while evolving for the future, and one part me begging movie and television viewers out there to demand better, demand more, demand something better to spend your damn money on.
Shut up and take my money!
Comment with your thoughts on this. Do you agree with my points? Why or why not? Did I miss any points you would make? I'd honestly like to have a back and forth discussion on all of this. It took me a while to write all this down and get all my thoughts on paper, and I think there was a lot of meat on this bone. So let me know your thoughts and feelings down in the comment section. Also, please share this video around to everyone you know, and don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the little bell to be notified every time I post brand new content. This is Marks on Media, and I'll see you next time.